Welcome back to Unboxing Logistics. I'm your host, Lori Boyer, here with you as always to talk about the latest issues in the logistics industry. And I am really excited today for our guest, Ibrahim Ashqar from Lumi AI, is here to talk to us all about the big buzzword in the industry that you can't get away from no matter where you are, every conference, every webinar I'm on, we really can't escape the topic of AI. Fortunately, I have brought in an expert, and specifically we're titling this episode Beyond the Buzzword. I want to hear from Ibrahim what in the world AI really means to us. Beyond all the cool stuff, how can you actually use it? How is it going to be important? So, Ibrahim, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience out there?
Yeah, it's awesome. Lori, thanks for having me and excited to be here. AI is definitely a buzzword, and hopefully we'll demystify some of the myths from what's actually happening in industry with AI and dive deeper there and talk about how it's actually being used in industry. Give a quick intro about myself and we can kind of take it from there. So Ibrahim Ashqar, CEO and co-founder of Lumi AI. We're basically trying to redefine how companies with supply chains interact with their operational data and make that interaction as easy as having a conversation. Prior to founding Lumi, I was the director of data science at Stored. People on the line may have heard of them, supply chain, 3PL, warehouse provider, and fulfillment. And before that, I spent about 4 years within Deloitte's supply chain AI practice, building enterprise-grade data products for a variety of large clients. And really, it was all about finding ways to leverage data analytics and machine learning to visualize, optimize, automate supply chain functions across a few industries, CPG, retail, 3PL. So think inventory optimization through better demand forecasting, replenishment, purchase recommendation engines, and a ton of dashboards for executives and middle management. So yeah, in a nutshell, data and supply chain, that's what I'm all about.
We were introduced from our co-friend, Nicholas Daniel Richards. Shout out to you, Nicholas. But he introduced you as the smartest guy he knows. So I love it. That's exactly what we want here. Smart people who can take really complex stuff. Like when you said that you want it should be easy. Easy and logistics hardly seem to go in the same sentence. It is so complex and so hard. So we are relying on you here to help us make AI easy to understand. The smartest people out there are those who can make it easy for us. So thank you, Nicholas, for introducing us. Ibrahim, We are excited to hear all from you today.
That's awesome. Yeah, Nicholas is awesome. I think he's overselling my capabilities, but I'll do my best here.
Oh, good. Perfect. Well, I'm sure you're so humble. Okay, so we're going to start out by me asking you just a couple of little background questions to get to know you a little bit better. And then I'm going to ask for some hot takes from you. So my first question I have for you is, do you have and what is your go-to comfort food? What food do you want that is just brings you back home, makes you feel comfortable when you're feeling like you need a little something?
This is going to be odd because I feel like, people expect an answer like burger or something of the sort. It's really funny. I actually have a very basic salad that I love to eat of just cucumber, tomatoes, and peppers. And I put salt and olive oil with it and sumac powder. And it reminds me of home. And I eat it all the time. I think I might be one of the biggest consumers of vegetables, cucumbers in general. That's my comfort for sure.
That is incredible. That is incredible. I need to put away the ice cream and the pizza and learn a little bit from you. You mentioned it reminds you of home. So tell our audience where is home? Where are you from?
Yeah. I was born in Jordan. I still go there a lot and have family there, friends there and everything, but grew up in Dubai, went to school there. And then for university, moved to Toronto, to University of Toronto, did engineering there. Started off with, I wanted to do robotics over there. I was really inspired by Iron Man. Then I realized hardware is really tough. So I just stuck to the software side of things. I'll just build artificial robots and things of the sort. Yeah,
You wanted to
been
go the easy route, so you went for some artificial robots. Yeah.
software is much easier than hardware. I'll tell you that. People, Boston Dynamics are, just some next level stuff, building those robots.
Okay, I love it. I'm gonna have to tell my husband. My husband is a software engineer, and my brother-in-law is a hardware engineer. And so I don't even think it's called hardware, but so I'm gonna tell him he's lost out to my brother-in-law now. Okay, question number 2. If you had no time or money constraints, nothing keeping you back, time or money wise, what hobby would you like to start, or would you like to be involved in? Dream
Oh,
hobby.
so I think it's an easy one. I love, I'm an adrenaline junkie in general. I love sports and things like that, but I really love diving. I'm so curious by just marine biology. And I actually at some point thought in between third year and fourth year of university, they have a thing called professional experience year where you take a year off and you go work somewhere. I kept trying to apply to Discovery Channel because I wanted to be in, one of these like expeditions exploring
Yes.
the sea and all the creatures and things like that. I love diving. I have a license, the PADI license, and you know, dive dove in some really cool spots. And honestly, I would love to do that. Just spend more time diving and just enjoying and learning more about the ocean. That's just kind of what I would do.
Oh, that's amazing. It is like our big frontier that we don't know very much about still. So,
Yeah.
love that. Love that. Okay. So, in every episode, it's really important to me that, if people only have a few minutes, if they haven't been able to listen to the entire thing, that they come away having learned something. So, I ask right up front, what are your, couple of takeaways that you've got that you want people to come away remembering? That's something they could implement, actionable, just something in their life that they can take away and remember from today's conversation. What do you got for
Yeah.
us?
So on the topic of AI, so I'll keep the key takeaways, more in line with that. But really, we're entering a new era with AI and large language models, and I think capitalizing on their ability to do anything is really a good application. The benefits are truly incredible. Don't be
Mm-hmm.
scared to embrace the change. Um, those who adopt this technology will be able to really elevate and kind of leap forward compared to others who don't want to adopt it. So definitely embrace the change. We're entering a new world. It's almost as revolutionary as, in my opinion, as the when the internet came out. And
Wow.
then for kind of those in kind of more in the corporate world, how do we implement AI? My key takeaway there is be very strategic and deliberate with your implementation of AI. Pick easy use cases with high ROI. Start small, prove the value, and then use the excitement and momentum to scale across the organization. That's really the best way to embrace and adopt these technologies. Don't start with a big bang. Start small, learn, iterate, and scale across the organization.
Okay, I love both of those. So, number 1, don't be scared to embrace the change. You're going to get left behind if you're not doing something. And number 2, um, easy use cases with a high ROI. That sounds amazing. And I'm going to definitely ask you, hold you to that. What are easy use cases that also have a high ROI? And then, scale from there. Love that. But first, before we even talk about that, give me a little background on what you think, how is AI, what does it mean here in the logistics and kind of supply chain space? What is, and how is it different, I guess, than outside of it?
Yeah, so I think there's three levels here, and I think they're all kind of meshed under this one term, AI. And I kind of want to break it up into three parts. And I think it'll help kind of set the framework for how to pick use cases, how to think of what can be done. I feel people always confuse just basic analytics and statistical models as AI.
Okay.
People, you synonymously use the word machine learning with AI, and people
Mm-hmm.
think of large language models like ChatGPT as AI.
Yeah.
And in on their own terms, I get why the terms kind of got muddied there. But let me kind of break it down. I think in logistics, just being able to have basic analytics and run statistical models adds a huge benefit, right? Like you have statistical models that can forecast demand. There's nothing crazy. There's no AI in it. It's just a really smart algorithm. Do you want to consider AI as a really smart algorithm? Some people do. But so there's like your statistical models, just your advanced analytics that add a tremendous amount of value just for things in analytics, like sort inventory in your warehouse according to kind of strategic pick locations, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
placing the inventory, high velocity inventory closer to the pick station, and the ones that are slow moving towards the end of the warehouse, you can minimize the distance traveled, right? It's not really AI. That's just a simple minimization problem, right? But it's advanced analytics, it's statistical algorithms, and it's very valuable. So that's layer one.
Okay, so layer
Um,
one, and I want to back up there just a minute. I love that because honestly, AI is a little bit. I work in marketing,
nebulous term.
so I know all about it. Is a term that people love to plug into like pretty much everything. I read some study once that said, "Oh, if you just put AI onto your description, then it's going to improve, your sales and whatnot." So for our audience, what I'm hearing from you, and I think is so critical, don't be confused about what AI is and what it isn't. Analytics are a really cool, awesome thing that absolutely we talk about that here. I've spoken with multiple guests on the importance of analytics, and in this industry, they're critical. That doesn't mean it's AI. That's not what AI is. Is that what you're saying? Is that what I'm hearing?
100%. I think that's very true. But a lot of people try to package things like, oh, these statistical algorithms are now AI, right? Just so like it
Mm-hmm.
sounds better, right? Because
Yes,
otherwise,
it is. It's a
I'm using
say a marketing
I'm using
technique.
a statistical model. You're gonna be like, I don't want your statistical model. I want AI.
Yeah.
But hey, that statistical model works really well. If not, you can't ask ChatGPT, hey, go forecast demand for me, right? It doesn't work like that. ChatGPT or large language models, um, they're good at comprehension. They're good at generating text, generating images, good at coding to a certain extent. But it's not going to kind of forecast demand for you.
Yes.
It's an algorithm is going to forecast demand. Now that's like, I want to talk about generative AI, large language models.
Yeah.
That's like
Yeah.
tier three, right? Um, and those are, I think those hit the market in November of 2022.
Two.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
November 2022, when it revolutionized the world. ChatGPT powered by GPT-3, the underlying large language model was revolutionary, right? Like understood what you're saying, response to
Blew all our
anything,
minds, Ibrahim. We're all like, what is happening?
blew all our minds and sparked a lot of interest and just like art of the possible, right? It's like, okay, and then everyone's like, okay, what can I use? What can I use,
Yes.
generative AI for? That became the new term for a while. And then it was like reinventing the wheel. Use generative AI for demand forecasting. Use generative AI for inventory management or inventory optimization, for route optimized, for predictive maintenance. All the use cases you can think of, they just slapped generative AI in front of them.
Yes.
And it just doesn't work that way, right? That's not what this technology does. Um, we can get into kind of how generative AI is really impactful in the world of supply chain and logistics. Um, and yeah, it's I think some of the uses there is like in summarizing contracts, like
Okay. Yeah.
from your supplier, if there's any SLA constraints or something like that.
So do you consider that AI then? The generative AI, the large language models, do those fall under what you're describing as AI?
For sure. I would describe that as artificial intelligence. Yeah, and I think OpenAI is in general building towards this concept of artificial general intelligence, and that's when the machines take over and we're done. I'm
Yeah.
kidding. But then
I know.
there's also
We're like we've completed. So with
yeah.
generative AI then, what were you
Hmm.
saying some of those use cases are for our audience? What can they do? You were saying contract stuff.
Yeah. Well, think of like what generative AI can do. Can create content, can summarize content, can create images, can and can you can feed it images and it can tell you what's going on, and it can code, right? And capitalizing
Yes.
any one of those capabilities is good. So, in let's say you get long contracts from your suppliers and you just want to know, hey, what's the SLA for this vendor, right? Instead of having someone kind of dig in to read, let me go to page 72 of
Yes.
this and oh, this is the SLA. The AI can kind of summarize that document and give you the insight very quickly, right?
Yes.
Um, Also things like image detection, right? If there's like, you can give a picture of something to AI and say classify it for me, right? So it can very easily kind of just tell you like, hey, is there something missing in this order or not compared to what's there? I think there's like a really cool vendor, Rabo, um, where they're essentially computer vision AI technology for pick stations, right? They just kind of give you incredible visibility of what's happening on the pick station, to improve order accuracy. Like, hey, here's all these items that are there. Hey, you missed an item, right? And it'll flag it, and it gives you full
Mm.
transparency that wasn't really there. Um, and yeah, so that's I would definitely say that's in the realm of AI.
Okay.
Um, and in the realm of generative AI, another aspect is its ability to code. I think there's a really cool use case there. So think of, obviously logistics companies, they're not software companies like, whereas we don't code or anything like that. But you think of the process needed to extract data insights from your database or data warehouse or sorts. You have a data team and they tend to be writing in SQL or Python to extract the
Mm-hmm.
insights you need, right? And that's something AI is very well suited to do. So now you can, empower business users who usually are overly dependent on data teams to extract the insights from these systems with the ability to talk to the data themselves, right?
Yes,
Like, hey,
yes.
what are the shipments that are 5 days past SLA date? Or hey, what are my slow moving stock? Which of my carriers has been giving me, for this particular lane, better prices than others, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that AI can translate your question into code, run the code in the database, and give you the answer back instantly, basically bypassing the data analyst in this case, not replacing the data analyst. I think the data analyst still needs to manage the system. It's important. It's not going to replace jobs. It's going to just, it's future of work. It's augmenting.
Yes.
It's eliminating this manual back office function, which is extracting insights from your WMS or your ERP or your OMS systems they use to kind of run your logistics operations, and just empower you truly to get self-service analytics, democratizing access to the people who know what question to ask, know why they want it, but don't know how to get it because they're not technical,
Right.
right?
Right. So you
So
see AI being kind of the best case scenario, a way for regular mortals like myself who don't code to be able to communicate with complex systems in natural language and just asking the questions, which is the best option for me, and then it will run that code. That's where you're seeing some of the best use cases of AI
correct for generative AI, that's for sure.
for
Then
generative
yeah,
AI.
I want to go back to the, we said
Mm-hmm.
there's three levels here: analytics, which tends to be confused as AI. Then there's
Yes.
generative AI that I just described, and then I want to say the third bucket, or bucket two, and how I have in my evolution, is what we probably call narrow AI or machine learning, predictive models, right? Like you're trying to build a
Yes.
forecast engine, demand forecasting engine. There's all sorts of algorithms out there, neural networks, XGBoost, random forest that can be used for demand forecasting, and all of those you can call them as kind of machine learning, or
Yes.
under the umbrella of AI. But they're not answering your question. You can't ask it a question in plain language, give you an answer. That's not what they do. What they do is they take, they've been trained on large corpus of data, and they do a very specific thing. Like, I'm going to predict how much demand we're going to see next week, right? And you can take this demand prediction to help inform labor planning decisions downstream.
How is that different than the analytics piece?
So analytics is, I would say, you can, yeah, it's true. It's a, there's a blurred line there. I would say it's in the sophistication of the algorithms. It really is kind of how you would separate it. There's things that are very clearly under the realm of machine learning that aren't analytics. Like, for example, for demand forecasting, and a statistical approach would be using the 52-week moving average. That's just
Okay.
basic analytics. You look at average demand over the past 52 weeks and say, hey, that's a proxy for future demand, right? And for the longest time, that was industry standard, by the way. But there's, all sorts of, you know, assumptions and limitations of just using a simple moving average, uh, that can detect seasonality or sudden, spikes caused by promotions or anything like that. Because just saying, hey, the average of last week is what you're going to get, or average of the last 52 weeks is what you're going to expect next week. What if next
Yes.
week's a heavy time period, Black Friday, or there's some promotion running or some seasonality or some event, the moving average is not going to detect that. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Whereas these other more sophisticated algorithms, XGBoost, under the world term of machine learning, they're able to kind of pick up on these peaks and troughs.
So, and you feel like all of these layers, as you're putting them, have a place in the logistics and supply chain. They don't necessarily all fall under AI, technically, but they do all have kind of a role to play on their own. Is that what I'm hearing?
in the analytics, the first layer analytics, that's like your business analysts, business
Mm-hmm.
intelligence folks. They're usually embedded in the business function. There's a requirement for them to be dangerous enough with SQL, understand, but have to be really, they really understand the ins and outs of the business, right? Because they're surfacing metrics for the business user. And you have your data scientists who are, they're a bit removed from business, but they're there just building predictive models, right? They're the ones
Uh-huh.
maybe creating the predictions that the business analyst would then use to convey the story. Like, oh, okay, based on the forecast we're getting from the data scientist, um, I'm going to use this figure to tell you how much labor we need in our warehouse next week, right? They're not the
Yep.
ones doing the predictive modeling. They're the ones converting that into a way that business users can use. That's like the difference there.
Yeah, that
Uh,
makes sense. That
yeah.
makes a lot of sense. And then the large language models falls into that's the third layer, right?
Yeah, that's the third layer. I think it's like a new area altogether. Data teams are, large language models. People are still experimenting, learning like how can we use large language models. Every company's trying to explore, and it's like, okay, how can we? This is transformative technology. It's awesome. A lot of the questions I get from executives like, hey, listen, like we know we want to invest in this space, but where do I start? Right? Like,
Yes.
how do I think
Yes.
of this?
Yes, completely, completely. That's exactly what that's why everyone's talking about AI, why everyone's talking about large language models. We can see it's very easy to see the potential and to see the fact that there's got to be amazing, use cases, but it's a lot harder to figure out where to start and how to implement uh, and move forward with that. So are people super excited about it? I'm just curious, like within the programmers, developers, are people excited? Are people scared? What is just their general, what do you feel like is the vibe there?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, people, if you solve a problem for someone, a pain point in their workflows, they get super excited about it, right?
Okay.
So back when I was leading data teams at Stored, had about 12 people, at the peak of it. And we keep cranking out dashboard after dashboard. And, we're trying to hit this utopia of self-service analytics, like a
Yes.
one-stop shop where all the business users can go and, get the insights they need, right?
Ibrahim, I'm the one asking for all those dashboards.
Yeah, exactly.
I know you're
Uh,
smart. Make me a dashboard. Yeah.
and it's like, and it was like it's like almost like it's like a utopia that you can never actually chase or actually get to.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a cartoon where you have like a stick and they dangle a carrot in front of them and you're
Yes.
running after. Like the stick's stuck to you, so you're never gonna get there.
Yeah.
Um, so that's kind of how it is, and it's because despite the number of dashboards we produced, people always kind of just bypass the processing. Hey, I want to go to the data analyst, my go-to data analyst. Give me this metric, give me this answer. Do it for me. I either don't know how to use a dashboard. Two, I don't know if the dashboard exists. Three, what I want doesn't actually exist on a dashboard,
Yes.
right? It's like a
Mm-hmm.
variation of it. And so the default reaction is I'm just going to go to my go-to data person.
Yeah.
And data folks are, I think they're pretty nice and they like to be helpful. And it's almost like it's bad in this instance because like the second you say yes, the other person's like, oh, I'm going to keep coming back and coming back.
Yes.
Um, and this becomes a vicious cycle where everyone just kind of goes to their go-to data person. All of a sudden, data teams are swamped with these ad hoc data requests, very simple,
Yeah.
low-level tasks of like basic things, right? That it's not a good use of what expensive data resources time, right?
So it
It,
excites them if they can simplify that somehow, hand it off. Is that what you're
they're
saying?
super excited if AI can take care of that for them, right? So you're telling me, listen, I
Yes.
can tell the AI about how my data is structured, and you're telling me it's going to answer all the questions that I get bogged down 50 times a day for. Yes, sign me up,
Okay. Yes.
right?
Okay, cool.
It's people always thought like, oh, aren't you replacing data analysts? No, we're empowering them to actually
Yes.
work on the things that are actually driving value and strategic initiatives of the sort. Not have to give you a report on, give me a report of all the shipments that were 5 days past late and I need it yesterday, kind of a thing.
Yes. Right.
The loudest person in the room. And there's a lot of teams, I think all data teams resonate with this. Like, there's always going to be ad hoc requests. That's like a part of the job, right?
Right.
But everyone work on, some cool things. But if you're constantly just working ad hoc requests, it's demoralizing and it's not a good use of time, really, given the cost of data resources.
How much time do you feel like is spent or was spent, I guess, even before AI, on those kind of requests the ad hoc requests, the Lori Boyers coming in and saying, I'd really like to get a dashboard on how these things performed and which one was best. And totally guilty. Sorry, apologizing to my own data scientist team. But yes. How much time is being wasted, would you guess?
I actually did a survey and I have a
Oh,
definitive number on
well,
this.
there we go. We got it.
I'll tell you, like earlier today as well, like I was just talking to someone who said they saw, they saw data teams of 50 people strong, and all they did was ad hoc requests, like 100% of the times. Like it was nuts. It was crazy.
Stop it.
Yeah, it was, and that's unhealthy.
Holy
I think when I joined Stored, there was a few analysts there to begin with, and they were also kind of like just swamped with requests. They were just actually just doing work from the loudest person in the room. So it was a
right.
completely ad hoc. Towards the end, it was like we couldn't eliminate it, right? It was still about every sprint, and we had like weekly sprints. Took 25% of time was like dedicated to ad hoc requests, at least.
Yes.
But I've seen people say it's 50%, and I've seen like best in class people, best in class companies say like, oh, we've actually got it down to like 15% or something.
Wow.
But it's still sizable, that's pretty impressive. But I would say most people are still kind of hovering in that 25 to 40% range, and that's kind of what the survey showed.
Well, and it's not a low paying job when when you're thinking about all the hours, and that adds up to what you're paying the data scientists aren't, a $10 an hour kind of job here. And so that gets very expensive. And it is, even though you can try to put boundaries around it, I know here at EasyPost, again, shout out to our engineers. I love you. They work hard to try to get some boundaries to protect their time a little bit, because they do get so many requests. But even with boundaries, I think it's hard to just fully protect. So I'm really excited then to hear. So you're saying AI then is a great use for all of those kind of time consuming requests that actually aren't that technical and don't need the depth and breadth of knowledge of these data scientists that they have, but is taking up their ability on kind of a shallow end.
Agreed. Yeah, it's a great use of AI for that sense. Yeah, just the ability also kind of just to pull information through large documents. Let's talk, we talked a lot about data, structured data, but let's talk about unstructured data as well. All the documents that you have, the large manuals on how to repair a certain item. That's, maybe more so in the world of manufacturing. How do you repair this machine center or something of the sorts? If you kind of connect all those unstructured manuals on data sets and things like that, like content, AI can kind of skim through them. It can read very quickly, and it can summarize very quickly.
Okay, Ibrahim, I'm gonna totally tell you this secret story about me. Okay, I'm gonna hope that I had a product person here, and they sent me this huge list of documentation on a new product rollout, and they said we're looking for some marketing, we're needing to, and I ran it through AI and said, can you just give me a summary? And it
Exactly.
what are the most critical elements? What are this? I put it together. I'd whipped something back, and he was like, "Holy cow! How are you so smart?" I didn't tell him. I was like, I know. I'm just a genius. He's like, I can't believe you
Thank you.
succinctly understood that so quickly and got it down. And so, yes, that's my embarrassing story of me taking credit because it was really AI, but it's exactly the kind of use case you're talking about.
Well, you're right. I mean, people are going to find ways to incorporate this into their workflows. They want to be more productive, and you saw an opportunity, you acted
Yeah.
on it, right?
I didn't want to read the 40 pages of documentation and technicalities, and there was code in there, and I was like, okay, just tell me what this is.
Exactly, exactly. And then, if you think of like large enterprises where that becomes like, oh, well, you can't feed in proprietary information to ChatGPT, which is going to use the information to model. So
Great
like,
point. That was a question I was going to ask. Security.
exactly. So I mean, like that's where like the enterprise grade permissions and security comes into place, right? And the need to have kind of solutions in-house, localized that not, ChatGPT is quite generic. It's awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't do anything about your business.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
You could customize AI to kind of learn your lingo, right? You can, like when we say UAM, we're referring to merchants with at least one paid order, or a new customer is this, whatever custom definition you have, or whatever lingo you guys use. Like we had a customer who, they collectively referred to raw materials as this very specific subset of products in their catalog, right? But
Yep.
there's no item called raw material. It's just a very specific, where the item category code is, XYZ,
Yeah.
whatever it
And no
was.
one else in the world calls it that. And every time you have a new employee who comes in, or so, it's like you're learning a whole new language. And the internal
Tribal
lingo.
knowledge, right? Internal
Yep.
lingo. And I think companies have an opportunity now with AI to, like, it's almost like, you onboarded a new person into your organization. What do you want
Mm-hmm.
this new person to know about, right? What data sources do you want to expose to it? And what do you want it to know about your business, right? And you can teach it all of these things, and you only need to teach it once because it's smart enough like that. You add
Yeah.
it to its knowledge base or brain or whatever, and then the AI now can, speak to you in your terms, right? And
Yes.
in easy post language, if you will.
Or
Um,
sometimes when I talk to AI and I'll say, talk to me like I'm 10 years old because I just don't understand this. Okay, maybe like I'm 8 years old now. So that it's fantastic at explaining and teaching. So let's talk though, like security wise. So let's pretending we're onboarding a new team member. It's an AI. It's maybe a platform like Lumi or whatever it is, whatever you're using out there. Um, how do you make sure it's secure? What are you looking for? That's a big fear people have. And I know your item number one. Don't be scared to embrace change. But there's good reasons people are scared, right? There's security risks, and we hear about those things all the time. So how do you what should they be looking for? Let's say that you're decided to use a new AI platform or something. How can you know it's secure? How can you know you're safe?
For sure. So I think I want to address this in multiple ways. There's secure from like a data security perspective,
Mm-hmm.
or from like a quality of output perspective, right? You don't want the AI giving you wrong answers.
Yes, yes, yes. Like that lawyer who put something into Chat GPT and it came up with a fake story and he went to court with it. It was a fake court case, something like that. We don't want to be embarrassed that way.
Side tangent, because there's a funny story here. There's actually, I can't remember. I think one of the car companies, automotive company, they added the chatbot to their website, or it might be a
Okay.
dealership, something like that. And the person started talking to the chatbot and realized, oh, this is pretty smart, pretty cool. And then somehow tricked the AI into giving him an offer to buy a car for basically, well below what it's actually supposed to be. And he's like, hey, this is what the AI told me. This is what your bot told
We definitely want security in terms of business practice and as well as risks.
security and quality of output and security and data security, especially in enterprises. I know that I realize in more in the small to medium size, people don't care as much
Yeah.
about their data. Everything's stored in the cloud already. So like,
Yeah.
everyone has my data. It's not a problem. But with big enterprises, they're
Mm-hmm.
so hesitant and reluctant to share data with anything. And it's funny because, like, I think they're all like, oh, you're going to be using our data to train your models, and we it's not fair and things like that. I explicitly remember talking to an executive at one of the largest food and beverage companies out there, and I was like, if you use OpenAI via their APIs or the enterprise package, they say that they actually delete all the information and they don't retain any of that. He's like, yeah, but I don't believe them.
Right. There's a trust issue.
Yeah, even to that extent, there's like a trust issue. People want to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that data stays within their environment at the enterprise level, and that's
Yes.
that's critical, right? You need to make sure that the you got to play nice with the IT team, so to speak. So
Yep.
if you're a software AI software provider and you're telling them, in order for you to leverage our system or our AI software, you have to give us your data, it's probably not going to fly. And so you
Right.
got to kind of tiptoe around them and make sure that you're addressing all their key concerns. Data stays within the environment. And I think that's kind of how you address the data security aspect of it in terms of just data security. Uh,
Yeah. Data
yeah.
security.
In terms of the hallucination aspect, that the
Yes.
probability of it giving wrong responses, I mean, I think this is something that is very prevalent in just large language models in general. They sometimes give you wrong answers, right? It's a fact of truth. And I think you have to be very careful and add enough guardrails so that you minimize that risk as much as possible. But I don't think you were there that where technology is not mature enough yet that it's fully eliminated. I think that risk is always going to be there to a certain extent.
Yes. And
And
that's
I
why
think
humans are still needed too, right? We have to be keeping an eye on this
yeah,
as well. We're not ever. Well, I can't say ever. Maybe someday all the robots will rule the world and we'll lay around and drink martinis. But right now, definitely not.
And this is why I always say I'm very pleasant and respectful when I chat to ChatGPT. Please and thank you. Just in case it remembers me in the future, I want to make sure it's
That's right. That's right. Someday you're like, I was the nice one, remember?
I was a nice one. I wasn't mean to you. I
I
wasn't mean
gave
to
you
you.
gracious feedback, didn't yell at you. Yeah, exactly. So I think that's an important thing. That is one of those risks. A business is risk at a time. You know what I mean? That's how you succeed. All the biggest companies out there, you had to be willing to, as you said in your number one, don't be scared to embrace change. That doesn't mean you embrace change without putting up guardrails and without having, little things on your chatbot that if it offers you an amazing deal on your car, that this is still going to be reviewed by a human or so, disclaimers, things like that.
Gamers. Yeah. And another way is like just being transparent in like how it came up with the answer, right?
Mm,
And so like, I think building trust through transparency is huge.
yes.
A lot of the problem with, going back to narrow AI, these machine learning models, is that sometimes they're black boxes, as in, hey, the forecast told me that we're going to sell 322 units next week. Why? I have no idea. That's what it's really, really the data scientists will tell you because they're accounting for so many features. They're like, yeah, it's 22% because of this, 14% because of that, 5% because of, this reason and
Mm-hmm.
like that. So like, it's actually very hard to give you a straight answer as to why the AI predicted that. With generative AI, I think you have an opportunity to be very transparent with the user when they ask the question, like, hey, here's the answer and here's the supporting facts, or here's where I pulled, here's the references. Here's where I pulled this information from.
Yes.
Here's how I thought through it. Here, let me state my assumptions very clearly. Let me walk you through step by step how I went through it. And I think that's very useful because, from the user's perspective, they have all the information they need to be like, is this insight actually correct? Or did the AI misunderstand what I meant slightly? And if it did, you can just like reprompt it. Hey, actually, you use the ship date. I wanted to use the delivery date actually for this analysis. And you prompt it accordingly.
Yes.
Yeah, because one thing we've learned from and just from seeing how people interact with AI is people tend to be very vague in the way they communicate.
Yeah.
Whereas AI is very literate, very, very explicit, and they'll take your word to a T. And
Yes.
so there's a bit of a communication gap at the moment, and I think it's only going to get better with time, but you have to be cognizant of that.
And it is a skill to prompt people correctly. I know my husband and I will joke because we'll play around on ChatGPT or something like that, trying to find answers to things, and he's terrible at it. I don't know why. And I think that's what you're saying. He'll ask vague questions, or of course I have a long history of research and reading and but it is kind of a skill to learn how to ask the right questions, how to get the right follow-up questions, how to know how to move it through it. And it, again, kind of that place where, so I guess for you, I'm going to say that place where humans are still necessary. But it brought up the question for me, for you, if we are talking to a company or something, we're wanting to make it simple, what recommendations do you have for helping your staff? Or so let's say, explain a little bit about what Lumi AI does first, and then explain how you would teach people to train their staff or something to use it.
How do we bridge that communication gap, basically?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So a bit about Lumi. We use generative AI. Our use case of generative AI is essentially so that it can go into the database, retrieve the insights, and get it back to you. So making extracting analytics as easy as a conversation.
Okay. So kind of replacing that data scientist piece of all those ad hoc requests, all that. Okay.
Exactly. Bypassing the data resource that you would have to go to, just ask your question in plain language, and the AI will do the hard work for you in a few seconds and give you the insight, as opposed to you having to wait 3 days or something. Um, Now we gave people this tool, and we realized, oh, people actually don't know what questions to ask and how to ask them. So
Yes.
we in our attempt to minimize hallucinations, when the AI detects the question is vague, it actually asks for clarifying questions, right? It's like,
Okay.
hey, is this what you meant? Right? And it rephrases it for
Okay.
you. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's actually what I meant. Let me try running the suggested prompt. So that's one way how you could do it.
Okay.
The other aspect was through prompt playbooks of sorts.
Okay.
So giving you like, hey, try out these prompts. We know you have a WMS. We know you have an ERP. And the data sets are, we have the inventory transactions, we have the shipments table, we have the orders table, we have the procurement tables and things like that, right? All part of a normal supply chain organization, right? And so it's like, okay, well, we know what kind of questions are interesting to these users because that's a space we've built in. So we give people this playbook that's embedded, like, hey, try these questions and just you run them, and you're likely to find some interesting tidbit. And we always try to make these insights very tied to like actionable results. So like their insights to either reduce costs, free up working capital, or in some instances actually help you increase revenues to a certain extent. One, what we're trying to do there is offer ROI right up front to the users. Two, and two, teach them how to prompt, inspire them. Say like, oh, here's how I structured my prompt, and here's how the AI responded to it. And so people learn. People like, oh, okay, so this is how I need to communicate with AI, or here's how AI likes to be communicated to. And so you
Yep.
start picking up on these prompting best practices and habits, and eventually you're going to get better. We're also kind of hedging on the bet that people inherently, as they interact with AI in their daily lives in all other platforms, are going to get better at communicating with AI. So it's just natural wave that's going to happen.
I say, and I've spoken to other people before when we've talked about AI and analytics, and one of the recommendations that I think is absolutely critical here, even if you are not yet adopting AI or using large language models or doing, please get on things like ChatGPT in your own personal life and start practicing using it. Like my husband and I trying around with it to get things, because it is kind of a skill you'll just learn, right? And so even if you haven't adopted something, it is so critical for our kids to learn. It's critical for everybody to figure out how to work with it. So anyway, I wanted to back that up. That is something I've heard from multiple people. You've got to get in and just start using it.
I agree. I mean, it's like as transformative as I mentioned this earlier. It's as transformative as the internet.
Yeah.
It's almost like someone in 1999 saying, I actually don't want to use the internet. I don't believe it's going to be a thing. Well, you're going to be left behind.
My husband always says 12 o'clock flashers, which then just ages him because it comes back from when you'd have a VCR and the 12 o'clock would flash because you couldn't figure out how to turn on the time. And that would mean you're old and not up with technology, right? And so that is kind of, we can't get stuck in that mindset of, oh, this isn't important. I don't need to learn it. It is really critical.
Yep.
We are totally out of time. Ibrahim, I could speak to you for about 20 hours. And maybe we'll have to have you back sometime because I would love to talk about all kinds of AI uses within the warehouse, within business, within inventory management, where are we and how. But I love your insights today. Were right on. Don't be afraid to embrace change. Okay, the bigger your organization is, the change might be small, but still, try to do something embracing change. And your second point of get those use cases that are easy to put into place but are a high ROI. And that's going to be the kind of uses that we're just talking about in terms of saving time for your data scientists and whatnot like that. Are there any other use cases that you'd like to throw out really quickly at the end that are a great high ROI?
Yeah, I really think there's, within the world of supply chain, again, across the three verticals of AI, the simple analytics, the narrow AI and generative AI, there's use cases across the board. I mean, the one I talked about with Robot is awesome, I think, where you're leveraging, AI's ability to see,
Yes.
to improve picking visibility, right? And improving order accuracy. The benefits, because you don't actually realize the cost of not fulfilling an order properly.
Right.
Right. It's, one, customer is dissatisfied, and two, you have to deal with the reshipping and all of that stuff. So, if you can use AI to eliminate these like missteps that happen from pick, pack, and ship to the customer, you should embrace these technologies. And so that's another good one, I think, to consider.
If people want to connect with you, are you on LinkedIn? What's a great way for them to connect with you and ask for more use cases or suggestions or even learn about Lumi AI? Can they, connect with you on LinkedIn? What's the best way to get in contact with you?
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely on LinkedIn. I try to post educational content, or I think at least of AI applied to operations in particular. So definitely feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and happy to chat. Also, kind of visit our website. It's lumi-ai.com. And our emails are there, and you can kind of reach out to us. So yeah, happy to chat to anyone who's interested to learn more about AI and how to integrate it into their operations and reap the transformative benefits it has to offer.
I love it so much. Thank you so much. This has been an incredible conversation. Seriously, I love AI so much. I'm a nerd at heart as well. And so I kind of geek out over it. And loved having you here. Loved hearing about actual use cases. So please, everyone, if you have questions, reach out. Again, appreciate you being here. Any final words of advice or just a sign off goodbye to our community here?
Honestly, thanks for having me, Lori. This was awesome. All the listeners, thanks for tuning in. And I think embrace the technology. We're still in such the early stages. There's so much experimentation. I think a lot of the innovation comes from just playing around and finding use cases of yourself and saying, oh yeah, that's a good one. So don't be shy, play around and explore. AI is here to stay, I think, and it's going to make all our lives easier, I hope.
I love it. Thanks everyone for being here. Connect with us on social media. Let us know what you're doing with AI. Share your ideas. We're going to have some sort of big geek conference together where we'll all talk about what we're doing. So we'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.